we're really happy to have you on the second webinar. If you're new, welcome to the RB family, right? Our purpose is to make the day-to-day of every UX researcher on the planet a little better, right? Whether they are practicing in e-commerce, in hospitality, from whatever background, and especially people that are crossing over into this wonderful, wonderful career. Today, we have three very special guests with us from super interesting industries as well. And their work also very different, as they are. We have Emilie Van Mau with us from a crypto company. She's now known as a crypto UX researcher. So, you should keep your eyes on that. We have Cheng-Hsiang from Google. Really excited to talk to him about what does researching in emerging markets like as you're crossing over and when you cross over. And Diana Prokusheva from SEMRush, right? Really working on analytics there and letting people find more of what they need. So I'm gonna actually pass it around and give you guys a few seconds to introduce yourself and we'll jump right in. Let's start with Emilie. Sure.
Thanks, Yao. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here today, and thank you for providing this platform, to share our experience among, researchers and upcoming, researchers. So, yeah, my name is Emilie, and I've been a UX researcher for the past 10 years, working in a whole bunch of industries, from medical to financial, government, human resources, and now crypto. So I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you, Emilie. Let's go to Diana.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to be part of this conversation. Interesting to hear what we are going to discuss as well, how we can going deeper in this topic as well, because my experience is a little bit different. My company didn't hire me as a UX researcher. I decided to start to be there as the first UX researcher. So I had a background in user design, like UX design, let's say, web design, product design. And then I figure out that we have some gap there, that we don't have research, and we have some teams who are working on this, but not appropriate team. And that's why I decided to initiate it. And yeah, we'll be happy to discuss all these pain points and all this process of transitioning when you are not just the one of UX researcher, but when you're the first one in the company. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, Cheng, last but not least.
All right. Thank you, Yao, and thanks everyone for joining us here. It's very humble to be here to see many, talented people who are super interested about how to transition your career into UX research. I also came from pretty diverse background. I had business background before. I've done sales job before, and then I kind of made myself as a landscape architecture at some point in my career, and then find my path like really into design. So I got some design degree afterwards. But somehow I also just found my path to UXR again, just because, I think life is, there's no certain path I want to take, right? I just live my, life events and my personal interests to drive me. So here I am right now as a UX researcher at Google, and I'm focusing on helping Google Ads to drive advertiser growth in emerging markets in the world.
Thank you all three of you to helping us understand a bit of your background, and we're actually going to jump into that question, right? So for me, crossing over into UX was pretty natural, but it also happened without any real purpose. It wasn't a target. 8, 10 years ago, UX wasn't a key thing you looked at when you went on LinkedIn to search for jobs. But you heard people talk about problems, and you heard a lot of people talk about building applications. And that's when it allowed me, it created a gap for me to cross over, right? But, to that point, when you're crossing over, does your background really matter? And what matters, in that background, if it does for you? So let's start with Diana with this question. Does your background matter when you're crossing over?
It's a good question because I guess it's more about the characteristics that you have, because it's more about if you're curious about other people, if you're curious about the data, if you have this, this maybe not the child inside, but when the children ask questions, why all the time. And I think this is the best how you can describe these people who have to go in this direction. That curiosity for the world, that we don't have this pattern, we don't have this, okay, if it's red, then it's something, I don't know, if it's good or bad. No, not black and white. It should be always a question like, why? Let's look at this, at like a goal that we have, for example, in the business, if you're working there, then to understand that, okay, how we can understand why it happened, or how we can find another ways how we can do that, and maybe to initiate the experiment or something. So I guess that the characteristic is more important. Of course, their background, it could help you in this way. But for me, the personality is the most important in this field.
Oh, good answer. How about you, Emilie?
Yeah, so I really understand what Diana is talking about. So in terms of background, I've seen people come from, quality analyst, UX design, project, managers, and myself, I started off as a coder. And then when I was working as a coder, I was basically an order taker. So without, I wasn't giving the requirements that I needed, to do my job more efficiently. So that led me to ask why we have to do it this way. There's a better way and I can show you how. And then some people, especially in the back end, engineers, they have things set up a certain way and, it's hard to deviate. And so you get into, conflicts and the whole point is, we to understand why you're building something, what problems does it help to solve. And so that's what is starting my journey into UX research is, constantly understanding why we're doing this, how does it help people, and also having, your mission, because, your background can help at some level. I study computer science, I study also international affairs. And nowadays, I feel like my background in, international affairs plays out more because I have to collaborate with a whole bunch of people. It can be politicians, regulators who deal with, policy making. When I worked at CFPB, and today is, the crypto market, how do we deal with safety, with, regulation, and making things, more accessible to everyone. So you have to work with cross-functional teams and, knowing about psychology, anthropology, all those things really, help to, basically do your own research. So
what I'm hearing is the background matters, but the personality and characteristics are even more important, right? And who you are. Let's go to Cheng for this really quick. Cheng, what do you think?
Yeah, I think no one should give up where they're coming from, right? It really depending on the narrative you're telling. So take myself, for example. I saw some comments in the chat that, yeah, I didn't come from like a very, academia background and focusing on psychology, and how do I end up at Google? One thing that probably didn't happen about 10 years ago is that UX research, there's no such role, or it's not as popular. And now people start to realize that research can really be about everything. Like Emilie just brought up her international affair background that helped with dealing with her current situation in crypto world. Same as my background, my previous business background as an international sales, I couldn't even connect that to in the future that I'm gonna apply this experience to helping Google expand our ads presence in global and emerging markets. And that unique experience now has become my very unique skill sets that other UXR might not have. And that's why I have the stepping stone to lead some of the project here at Google. And UXR is probably one of the most, the role that with most diverse background I have observed in some of the company I work with. People are really coming from different backgrounds. So I think no one should take away their, where you're coming from. If you are super interested or into, let's say, trust in your research right now, in your PhD, it's a very, very solid and very, very valuable domain knowledge that you own, that you can show impact in some of the largest company in the world, just to solving that very vague, very blue sky kind of problem area. And if you're someone who is just really into, let's say you come from design background and you're really good at doing motion design, and you decide you want to transition from design to research, you want to research how user perceive, or all kinds of way to evaluate how motion design can be evaluated by product team, drive whatever interactions, it could become a very unique skill set that you have. So that would be my take. It's your background matters. It's depending on how you tell the story.
Yeah, this is very important. And that key, those last few phrases there, something to capture, right? Depending on how you tell the story. Cheng just went through a very broad, right, scope of what it can be, and then got very, very acute, right? Like, don't quit your PhD just yet for UX research, right? Finish it, because it's likely that the companies of the future are going to need that exact skill set, right? That very random or thing you're passionate about can turn into something great. So let's keep that afloat. Well, since Research Bookmark, is always conducting research on researchers and people coming in the field, we're going to take a few minutes here to jump into an Intercept survey. And Paul, please keep us on track, share the link, and let's get some music, and we'll be back for the second question in just a few minutes. Thank you for the short intermission and the nice music. We're back to our talk. That was quite important time for us to capture a lot of what pushes us forward. So we really appreciate that. So let's jump into adapting existing skills and using that to fill your knowledge gap, actually crossing over into a new field, right? So think about yourself when you first started. Those first 6 months to a year in which everything is new, the keywords, the lingo, meeting people, creating objectives, and on top of that, understanding the company you work for, right? Very, very tricky times. How do you adapt your existing skills to cross over into UX research successfully? Let's start with Cheng.
All right. So basically, when I think about let's first talk about how I get into my first research job, because I think there would be a question that maybe many of you have in mind already. At the time, I say I come from business background and I have design degree too. So for me, that is not enough to get into any UXR role, because UXR need research basic skill set, at least starting from an internship, something like that. So at the time, I actually first started interning at Cisco as a UXD intern, but I volunteered myself to drive some research project just because we don't have any UXR in the team at that point. And we have some basic research training at school, those are just very, very basic one. But there, I used that opportunity to learn from senior researchers in different teams, ask them about how they perform their work. What's the easiest thing I can apply? And that's also researching on real world products. So I kind of leveraged my UXD background and give me a kind of stepstone into the UXR world, and making sure I really enjoy that work before I make the transition. So anyway, after the internship, I realized that yes, I like doing research more than design. So here comes a very difficult time for me to find a real job, a full-time job, not just an internship, right? So I don't know if any of you have been into the moment that you send your resume and the application to many, many places, but none of them got, a reply to you or any good results, right? I can share you with the data that I have. I sent out in total to 402 companies in the kind of 6 month period. And I had about 90 interviews. I mean, some of them are, a series of interview, but eventually I only got one offer. The ratio is less than 1%. So I make my effort to get into even a starting entry point UXR job at eBay. And why eBay is going to hire me? I think they're okay with my, previous internship portfolio. But the most important thing is my previous background in running as a sales role in Greater China and Southeast Asia really helped them choose me, because they are at that moment trying to push eBay marketplace to China and to India and Southeast Asia. At the time, my background became quite unique, because none of other UXR, just be focusing on doing the research work has that kind of unique background. And so I joined as an entry-level researcher. And from that on, I start building my actual UXR skill sets. So that's kind of how I get into the UXR, a real UXR job world. But, then there's a series of learning for me, because I only possess a really basic skill. So I have to learn a lot of things from scratch, such as my quant skill, even though I have an econ degree. So quant for me is not a hard skill, but I just need to apply that to social science. So I took online courses. I got many paid certificates. I paid for myself to get those education outside my work. I leverage company training programs. I learn from senior UXR. So those are the things that I actually invest myself once I kind of land the first real UXR job. So yeah, I'll post here. Yeah.
This is very interesting. So everyone here is hearing the data, right? A bunch of application, more than the average person. And what got you back there is actually the first question. That very unique skill set. Your background is super important. Learning how to leverage and tell that story is probably what got him the first job at eBay. And then that first job is your learning ground. The company is obviously getting from your existing skills, but you're also learning a lot, right? So let's go to Emilie, right? How did you adapt your existing skills as a coder in international affairs to kind of fill that gap as you were crossing over and crossing it?
Yeah. So actually, when I was working, so I was working at AmeriQuest. It was one of the biggest mortgage lending company at the time, and one that defaulted during the financial crisis. So I basically was, doing my coding work, and then wasn't really like feeling it. It was like, doing all those codes and really not understanding the end goal of what, I really was doing back then. Because when you graduate from school, you have all these ideals of, yeah, I love to do this and that. So for me, it was actually working in the international arena, and it was so competitive that it wasn't like a place for me to start. So coding was the first one, and then from there, you work with basically a team of people, and some of those people, are back there was usability team, so they actually looked into why we need to build those type of products, like how it helps people. And then I started like getting to know them and what they're doing and how it can apply to my work. So that's when I got exposure to usability, and I found great mentors, and did basically advise me that I should just like jump into it and do actual prototyping, like wireframing. So back then we used Visio, and then trying to build those wireframes, like blueprints. And I learned about information architecture, how you built the application, how pieces are put together. And then I started off doing UX design. So I got hired at a hospital, Thomas Jefferson Hospital, to actually design application to help patients and physicians. And that's how I got my first exposure into UX design through mentorship. And then from there, I was able to apply it to other industries like gaming. So back then we wanted to find a way to make things more fun, so people can actually use different applications. And I wanted to learn about gamification. So I set myself up to learn about it. Of course, Google is your best friend. So I Googled everything to learn about what are the resources that I could look to, and how do you learn about gamification. So LinkedIn too was a great place to learn and connect with people in the field. So I started my journey on connecting with the UX community and learning from them, and then along with doing my own training, because back then it wasn't really available they didn't have like UX training per se. And so I rely a lot of my mentors that been helping me all throughout those years. Even now, like we're still connected, and that's how basically you get your next job, because they know how you work, how adaptable you are. And my proverbial that I love is change is the constant, right? So for me, really learning is the constant in this field, like you always have to keep learning the new methodologies, or like combining methodologies to do your research, because some methodologies come from different fields like anthropology, contextual inquiries, like I use that a lot, especially pre-pandemic. And then on moderate testing now, you can sort of do that with diary studies now. But so you really have to find a way to learn like the skills, and also be having the right skills and qualities that it takes to be a researcher, like good listening skill, good analytical skill, and all this. I mean, some people, and empathy, like how do you really translate empathy to the business? And that's one of the hard things to do, because the business is interested in the bottom line, and they don't like really care about the users. So how do you really translate the emotional journey to the business, so they understand the experience of someone that is going through the experience for the first time. And there's something that it was missing a lot in the places that I worked at. And I think that's why they hire researcher, because there's this gap between the user and the actual business. So we here to fill those gaps.
It seems there are multiple ways that our speakers here have been able to fill those gaps. Self-learning, really pushing that. I love Cheng to share some of those places that you got certified that you really like, so our users here and everyone here can level up as well. Diana, you're the last person on this question of kind of filling your knowledge gap. You come from a very interesting perspective, because you came from a design perspective in the same company to make this switch. So how's that for you? How are you able to fill those gaps?
Yeah, I want just to agree with Cheng that actually you have to be in the right place at the right moment, because it's really important to be this, and to, of course, before you should work hard. But anyway, there should be this moment, I think. And because I have the master degree in software engineering, so I worked as a developer in the beginning of my way. Then I switched because I thought that this is a little bit boring for me, and I decided that user experience is more familiar and it's more for the user. At first I thought that maybe front end, but then I thought like no, it's totally different. We have to make it easier for the user, and I saw that it should be better for them. So and then I was responsible for 2 tools in the platform, and I had some research activity for my 2 tools. And then I understand that, okay, I wanted to make this transition. We need this team. And I also talk a lot with different departments, with other team members, and with other teams as well, because we had like 30 UX designers at those time. And they supported me. And then the hardest part was for me to explain it for business. How Emilie mentioned before, it's really hard because you see this low fruit that you can hang, you can take it, but you don't know how to explain it for them, especially in the beginning of your way. It's really hard because all what works with customer success, even with sales, could work. With C-level and with business, it doesn't work. So that's why, of course, you need some mentor. You need somebody who could teach you how to translate it. And I guess for me, it was the hardest part of all this journey, because I tried like 5 times, I guess. I had one meeting, and it had been like half of the year. It's because it's hard to reach them. So, and I went and like trying all. Okay, let's start all over again, guys. Let's start from the beginning. And it was good for me that I had this background actually in software engineering, because it helped me with analytics, with SQL, and with comparing all this data and visualize all this data. And with, I guess, with logic, with just how logically explain, because it's also important, the cause and effect. It's really important to be fit in the sentence for business, and it should be super small sentence, like something really just in the right in the point, like what one sentence, and it should be clear for them. Because if you don't try to attract their attention and they get bored, for example, or whatever, you lose this conversation. You can start all over again. So yeah.
This is super interesting. So you spoke about a few things, right? The background translating to, and two of the speakers talked about something very key, is mentorship. So fortunately and unfortunately, mentorship is one of those things that can really change your career. And if you find the right mentor, it's very positive. And if you found the wrong one, let's not talk about that, right? But the key here is finding the right people to ask fundamental questions to. How do I get through? How do I get through my first step in this new crossover, right? And even when you get that first career job, how do you establish yourself as a researcher in a new practice? And to be honest, most of our practices are young. Companies are just building really strong research wings and research verticals onto their products. So it all across, we're all learning. But that, I think that was a strong point out for me, that as you're filling your gap, you need a human touch. And that mentorship and being able to go out of your comfort zone and learn new things, as Cheng was doing, is also very important. We're going to transition into the fun part of the survey here. Paul, please take us away with some music, and we'll be back in a few minutes to keep going on this very interesting journey we're on. All right, welcome back. Thank you again for helping us learn a bit more about you, how you work, what you do, and how we can better serve that along the way. So let's dive into a very important question. And we've already seeing some questions around this already, and we want to get in deeper. So what are some resources in your crossover journey that you couldn't have done without? Anything from Google itself all the way to books, right? And tell us which one made the most difference for you. And depending on who you are, what background you came from, obviously there are differences there, but we want to know which one made the most difference for you. Let's talk to Emilie first.
Yeah, so actually the main resources are what is available right now, so when you start working in a new company, get to know the people you work with, because they are your main resources. Knowing, about the business, the insight, right, that you might not know if you don't really connect with them. The context of, the projects. So those are the first, line of resources that I use, is what is available. And then you go deeper into, if there's a research team in place, like what tools they're using. Is there a research repository somewhere to look at, previous research and what has been done. And yeah, so those are like, the two main ones. And then outside of, what you can do within the organization is to look outside of it to get different perspectives. So I love talking with the people I used to work with from previous organizations, because you're going to build friendships and connection, with people from different backgrounds that are going to, like be your allies. And I had plenty of conversations with them about, like how is like to start as a first, researcher in a company, and the office politics involved, like how do you make other people aware of research, and how can they value it, because a lot of times they haven't been working with research at all, so you really have to evangelize and expose them to what research is. So you can have like a deck, like really introducing what is research. And then, when you first meet with them, and then see, how it's going to help them. So it's also like understanding each other's needs, right? Like from a product perspective, what is the end goal? What we were trying to do, and how can research help with this goal? So, and from marketing, because you're also going to be working with, like marketing, data science, or who knows who, and subject matter experts. So really like understanding the goals and what they're trying to understand through research, that's key. And the actual outside resources that my go-to places are like the Rosenfeld Media. They release a lot of books related to UX, and I actually joined the qualitative and quantitative group that is hosted by Rosenfeld. So you get to connect with the UX community from the quant and the qual side. And that's, something so valuable that you can bring into your line of work. And there's also like, Nielsen, they have great videos, training on, UX methodologies. And even Jared Spool, who has the Center for UX, excellence, and providing training for people, with or without UX background. So, and yeah, so I think, and there's so many more, resources now available, and you just, have to, Google and ask. And also LinkedIn is one of the, main place where, the actual community is connecting. And the research operation group, like trying to join different groups within LinkedIn is going to expose you to a whole bunch of opportunities. And that's what I advise to my mentees, like you really have to step up in, your connection, because that's where your, next job might be. And, when you build this, connection and friendship, it goes a long way. So.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the inside out approach. And I think one thing that really stood out to me, there's the first thing she says, the people. This walking library of knowledge, that is the lowest hanging fruit to make you successful at your job. And then kind of expanding out from there. And she almost gave away all of the resources, but I know Diana and Cheng have more. So let's hear from Diana next.
Yeah, I agree with Emily. Yeah, it's really important. We connect with people from different departments. I guess this is the first rule you have to do, because you are going to meet these people around. And for me, it was also helpful to find people who are on the same position and had the same situation. For example, I found at Lessian, they also tried to build the team inside, and I was in the connection with them to ask what pain points they had, how they struggled with it, what solutions they made after that. And it was also helpful for me. Yeah, Emily shared the jar's full. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, actually, I also can recommend. He's really, it's really nice. Also, David Travis, he has these tea breaks. It's super short. You can just have a tea as well, or coffee in the morning, and just listen for his podcast. It's short and also nice. And I personally like Jeff Sauer. It's more about the data. Maybe it's more close to me, but actually, if you want to learn something about quantifying research, then this is a good source. And for fun and beginners, I can recommend also Nick Anderson, if somebody knows. And she has also mentorship program and a lot of what is good for people who are just starting. It's a step-by-step guide, you know, not like a article about everything. Or I know, something broad, but this is really a guide. You know, like you start here, then you go there. And for when you're just a beginner, it's excellent, I guess.
Thank you so much. I think one thing we're going to be doing as the RB team is collecting this is we're going to collect these resources and make sure everyone has access to them, either, you know, before we leave or after, right? We're going to collect all these because they're very important resources. And as Diana just mentioned, again, finding someone related to your archetype in which you're walking into and being able to make that your walking and living kind of resource is very good. So let's talk to Cheng about this as well.
Sounds good. So I think Emily and Diana both emphasize on the importance to have your kind of mentor committee, right? Like that's super important and critical. So I won't just go more into that because we kind of assume, I think everyone should think that it's a must. So having a committee for yourself, that's really critical. But let me talk about some other perspective, right? When I think about the core competency of a UXR, for me, that's kind of three basic pillars. I think people can think it differently, but for me, number one, your product sense. You cannot say, I want to do just research without knowing product. So you must have a really good product sense. Number two, communication and collaboration, how you work with people. Number three, your core research skill. So these three pillars are most important to me. And there are things that I do to try to elevate my, skill set and competency in these three areas. Let's talk about communication and collaboration, right? So oftentimes, people not only want UXR to run studies, they look up to you to bring the team together to have a shared vision. So I took some training of how to run workshop, right? So some ideal and many other agencies, they'll provide like design thinking facilitation certificates that you can use. Google provide, design sprint, Google Design Sprint, which is quite famous. So those are the moment that UXR can show leadership, how to bring cross-functional team together to have a shared vision. But those things, if you don't have any of those previous experience, I think it's best that you are able to kind of watch online, like what are those things, what does those workshop entail, and then eventually you can try to get one. But I think most important is that you have to apply in your real work. If you just go learn but without any chance to apply, it's harder to convince other people, and it's harder for you to internalize those things.
Trent, would you dive into us just a bit?
Sure.
I just cut you off, but if you can dive in after you finish about product sense, because that is such a key skill.
Mm-hmm. Right. So product sense, I think I'm lucky because I come from design background and I have some internship in product development process. So they come pretty organic and natural to me. I know what's the actual product development process. If you coming from academia background without any product development experience, that's where your mentor can help you with. But I would say nothing works better than actual hands-on experience. So either it's paid job, non-paid job, volunteer job, go volunteer yourself, try your best to get, at least some hands-on experience. Otherwise, it's not tangible especially when you're doing interview, like people will be asking, hey, have you actually done anything with the real world product? And if you say no, it's harder to convince people. So it's a reality. So I would highly encourage everyone to, get your hand dirty to work on some real products.
So go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're good.
Again, I was about to mention you bringing in the Google source, the Google trainings that are very popular and that are also very extensively researched before they're put out, because they do these things all the time. Adding on to all other resources that we were just talking about. We will go into some questions just right next, and we'll jump right into it just so we can, because I think we're getting warmed up here, but let's jump into some questions. If you have a PhD, would you still recommend applying for internships or consulting work to gain experience, or would it be fun to apply for specific positions right away? Let's go to Emilie first.
Right. So actually, I had a lot of mentees that I've been mentoring throughout the years, and a lot of them are PhD students. So what I do is, we go over the experience, like the research that they've done through the PhD program, and then understanding what is applicable to, the actual research field, like UX research field. So I just want to handhold them to make sure that they really understand what is the difference between going from academia to the actual field, and is also like, how do you really deal with the business. So having the insight from someone who is already working in research, like, how can you apply those research skills to, the actual user research, field. So that's key. And, some have, so I advise what they feel comfortable with. So some, want to start with an internship because they feel, that's the right way to start, to get, your toes, wet. And if, you feel more comfortable doing this, go for it. But some, and most of them, need that financial, security, they want to secure a job so they can, basically start, like living and working, doing what they want to do. And so if it's that case, like, you really have to dig into the job description, find, those key words and terms that they're looking for, and how those terms translate to your experience in research. So we go through, this whole how you relate, your experience with, the job, and then go through the resume, the portfolio, and then how we can actually like present, like tell the story of how they're a good fit for this job and organization. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll jump into other questions so we can get kind of a little bit of variety in here. So but we can throw this question to Diana. I understand that we need to adapt our research skills for UX, but how do we communicate to recruiters on LinkedIn profile that we've done just that?
Good question. So yeah, with the recruiters, it's also interesting, to be honest, because actually they don't understand sometimes the difference. And they want to hear some patterns. For example, on the first interview, they sometimes want to hear the code, some codes, some words. And that's they couldn't identify that, yeah, you're the right person and they can promote you or somehow to share your contact with the team. And so with the recruiters, I guess this is important to work with, again, with a mentor or with some people who can advise you and who are on another side, who are reading these resumes or portfolio or whatever, and it's always helpful. It's really important when you develop something like this and it's the first time in your life when you're doing it, please find the person who could help you. You can find it for free because there are a lot of mentorship programs for UX researchers or UX designers, it doesn't matter. So please find it. It's the key, I guess. It's how they can help you adopt it and try to make it better, like to look, not because not to make you better, but just that this resume can speak beyond you. And also, I think that maybe it's you can follow the rules and you can also present your actual work, what you're doing, but it depends what these people are searching for, and maybe your initiative, how you can show them your work, and maybe even if you have some volunteering work, it could help you. And to show again how Cheng shared with us that it's really important to have some experience. And sometimes they really searching for the person who has this experience, and that's why you have to mention everything what you've done before. I guess this is also important. And if you know somebody who are on another side, who are searching for the employee, it's also a good I guess it's a good point just to start the conversation with the researchers, if you not with the recruiter, actually what they are searching for, what is the project that you want, just to know them better, and you are on this position, and sometimes it helps.
Yeah, no, this is a very important question. And actually, our next webinar is going to be dealing with just this. So if you're transitioning, you have friends transitioning, invite your mom, your dad, anyone trying to get into UX research, because we're going to be doing skits. We're going to be answering questions, how it will be asked and how it will be answered in the interview. And we're going to do that live because we see it. We're getting so many requests for real life job interviewing skills. So our next webinar is going to be focused on jobs, right? So mark that, some great speakers as well. So shameless plug from RB, we're going to be discussing actually interviewing and getting a job in UX research next as well. So this question is for Cheng. I wanted to ask Cheng that I see companies like Google hire mostly degree or PhD in psychology and computer science. If you do not have such academic backgrounds, what kind of competencies, experience, or skills do you need to be able to work at or in Google?
Yeah, that's basically talking about me, my background, right? I don't have such background. But going back to the three key pillars that you have, right? Your core research skill, your communication, collaboration skill, and your product sense. I think for the core skill, if you want to get into companies like, Facebook or like larger company, they have a very, very 360-degree way to review every aspect of your core research skill. So if you don't end up to get into those company right away, that's not, I'm interviewing a lot of people every week, so that's really, really common, even if you have PhD. So in that cases, just get into some company to start with, and then you can work your way to the ideal company you want to land eventually. But besides the core UXR skill, that whether you have those or without those, you need your other experience to help you build up, elevate your core skills. And then not just the UXR skill, right? We are also touching upon communication and collaboration skill. Do you have real life experience to drive collaboration? Is your word or your research result convincing enough to persuade your stakeholder to follow your recommendation to implement something or change the strategy of product or whatever? And do you have, those very solid product sense or product understanding? At least what's the pros and the cons of different UX design by applying some maybe heuristic principles developed by Nielsen Norman Group or some other free framework on website that you can find. I think only when you are able to have a collection of those, then it would be easier for you to try those giant company, because they really assess every candidates in probably the process would be even longer and more complex than you would imagine. But if you can start from somewhere that can get you feet wet first, I think that you're already in a really good spot. And also to tell you, not a lot of people in UXR world right now, and this trend and this job open is still growing really fast. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the beginning of the era. Just like 10 years ago, UXD suddenly become so popular and a boom that everyone comes from traditional graphic design, started getting job on the tech world. I think same thing is happening in the UXR world right now.
I think this is fantastic. Cheng, would you repeat those three pillars for us again? I think they're very essential for people to hear.
Okay, no problem. So this is also how we here at Google assess candidates. Actually, there are four. One is your core research skill. That includes, when we're talking about core research skill, it doesn't mean that you must demonstrate a breadth of everything, like from interview, diary study, rapid iterative testing evaluation, and then eye tracking and quantitative analysis on your whatever survey method you're applying. Is that what research skill set that you are really good at? You are the shit, and you can teach people about this, right? So this is really critical. And best that you have mixed method, like one qual and one quant method, because this has kind of become a standard right now. And for communication and collaboration, right? So this is the chance for you to show, how you can embrace feedback, point of view from other people, and then kind of fit into your research process and recommendation. And then your product sense, I think I already talked about it a lot. Do you know the pros and cons of different UX principles in a product? And do you know what's the product goal enough? And then finally, it's the leadership. I think leadership naturally comes when you have elevated all others area, then you become the owner or you become the authority in your area. And I think the easiest way to build that is that you are focusing in one area that's, you're the king in that area and nobody else or few people in the world can compete with you there. So that's kind of my take on, like what are the four really important pillars as a mature UXR.
Take notes. We're going to be digging deeper into those as the months goes on as well. We're right in the end here. The RB team is about to come talk about a few more things and take over. But I wanted to thank our speakers for their time, their long journey of prepping with us, and all of the calls and everything else. We really appreciate you kind of leveraging your knowledge to help just a tremendous amount of US researchers around the world scale up all at once with these webinars. This is why we make them so open. We make them a little unstructured so people can learn and kind of take a laugh from this. Next time, we're going to be diving into what our conversation ended. What are people looking for in an interview? How do you answer those questions and kind of show you have those skills for real? And with that, thank you. I know the team, Paul, is taking over soon. And there are a few more key things we're dropping for everyone. There's a digital gift before you leave. Make sure you get it. And we're doing a few things as well. Again, thank you all speakers. We really appreciate your time.